Welcome in, friends and future friends, to this episode of the Sports and the World podcast. Hope all of you are well and safe out there. Lots to get to. We have the Stanley Cup and NBA Finals getting underway. We have WNBA talk, Commissioner's Cup. Oh boy, we got two big trades in the NFL. And in Brown's big picture, I want to talk about WWE, the Clash in Italy PLE, but I want to talk about it in a different perspective on based on interactions I had on social media. So, with that being said, let's just jump into these NBA finals. The Knicks having the rest, beat the Spurs in Game One in San Antonio. Jalen Brunson, 30 points. He was hurt early, came back, played phenomenally, especially the Knicks as a team in the second half. But shout out to Larry True Chairman getting big time minutes in Game One. Um, Look, for these two teams, for the Knicks and the Spurs, it's a tale of two paths to this NBA Finals. And for the Knicks, they played lights out the last two series, and I'll get to that stat shortly. And for the Spurs, they beat the defending champions on the road in a game seven. So we look at these two teams like it's just game one. So we're not going to read into it, but something stuck out that I spoke about in the previous round in the finals, conference finals, that stuck out again and showed itself again in game one, and that's the turnover market. For the Knicks, they had 8 turnovers. The Spurs had 13. And you're saying, okay, that's not a lot. But here in the conference finals, in that 7 game series, they had 112 turnovers. And so you can do the math. We're all pretty smart. And how much they about average per game. So it may not seem like a lot. But let me put it in this perspective. The Knicks from the semifinals and in the Eastern Conference Finals have a combined 111 turnovers. In 2 series, they played 8 games. This series, you have to be, especially in the playoffs, you got to take care of the ball. And for the Spurs, they're a young team, and I think they're going to figure it out. It's just game one, so it's nothing to panic about. But it's something that I talked about when they played the Thunder that you have to take care of the basketball, especially in the playoffs. And Reggie Miller talked about this in the series that possessions and how limited they can be. And when you're playing a team like the Knicks, who are flying the group, and look at the Knicks. Listen, Josh Hart had 15 boards, and Carl Towns is finding himself more as a passer, which I absolutely love and absolutely enjoy. And we got my guy, we got John Brooks in here saying, "My tribal chief, I salute you." We're going to talk a little bit of wrestling later, as I mentioned. But let's, but to kind of talk about game one, it, this series has game 6, 7 vibes to me because I think once the Spurs figure it out, and I think more specifically for the Knicks, and I owe an apology. A lot of people will not apologize, but I apologize because I thought the Knicks hiring Mike Brown was kind of like Tom Thibodeau's same guy. But you look at how defensively they are, how they play, and more specifically, how they're taking care of the basketball. And in the playoffs, that's something you got to do. And shout out to Mike Brown. And like I said, for the Knicks to be in the finals, it's great for basketball. And there's just certain teams who make the finals. It's just great for basketball. The Knicks are one of those teams in the NBA, and it's a great story. You have a great story of Jalen Brunson. If you go back and pull the footage, a lot of people didn't want Jalen Brunson, and now they got him on had him on a sweet deal to get him, and has just played absolute lights out basketball as well. And as for the other side with the Spurs, of course, Victor Wembanyama. And then what else can you say about him? He did what he can. He had 26 points and 12 boards. He did. And then Julian Champagne, he had 5 threes in the first half. So it just boiled down to turnovers and the Knicks just playing great defensively in the second half. So, like I say, to put a button on it, I expect this series. I think game two. I think the Spurs they're going to play a little bit better, and so yeah, and then also a little hockey. The Golden Knights going on the road, getting a road win over the Avalanche. I look at that series. That has potential to go 6-7, 6 or 7 games. I didn't mean to do the 6-7. I apologize, but yeah. So sticking. So kind of, we're going to NBA Finals. Let's transition to a little NFL talk. Two big trades. AJ Brown going from Philly to the Patriots. Listen, the biggest takeaway from that trade is that it just felt that excuse me, it just felt that it was time for Philly and AJ Brown to part ways. It's like a relationship. It worked well. Everybody got something out of it. So it's not the worst thing in the world. The trade worked out for both sides, and I feel that now Drake May gets a number one guy, and not to disrespect the Patriots wide receiving core, but they have something there. But I think the big winner in all of this between this deal is honestly is AJ Brown. I think he goes somewhere. He goes to be what he was in Tennessee, a number one guy. Not saying he wasn't the number one guy at Philly, but it just felt like Devontae Smith was just kind of maybe taking majority of the receptions and looks from Jalen Hurts. And and John put it here like AJ Brown didn't want to be a big one. Yeah, he did. But I think more so, I get it. And I could argue that Philly was like I think Philly moved on from him when I saw him sitting on the bench reading a book. Yeah, it's pretty much over. And then they draft Makai Lemon from USC, and like yeah, they're going to ship him. It's not a matter of if but when. So I feel like everybody wins. Drake May gets a number one receiver. Offense gets a little bit better. I still, the question mark for New England is the offensive line, but they have their receiving core got that much better, and getting a guy of AJ Brown's caliber. So that's kind of the way I kind of look at it there. And for the big trade, Miles Garrett going from Cleveland to the Rams, which I'm gonna get to them because Les need. We talk about how Rosen needs to be investigated. We need to investigate Les Snead. We need to investigate because for the Miles Garrett going to the Rams give up their first round pick in 2027, a second in 28, and the third in 2029. And they also get Jared Verse, which I think was the key to the deal. I think you had to get another, especially defensive player. I think Jared Verse is young, and I think that just kind of gives them the head start, defensively, so they won't feel that far behind. Jared Verse is not terrible. I just think when you can get Miles Garrett, I think, and we've seen how the Rams do trades, they have no business giving up picks to get that happen, and maybe potentially a player to move on from to get the job done. And but let's just talk about Miles Garrett. Let's just talk about Miles Garrett here. Listen, if you're telling me that you get a two-time defensive player, let's put this in perspective. In the history of the league, three players have won this award three times. Miles Garrett, including Miles Garrett, there's been six players who've won this award twice. So in the history of the league, we've had nine players to win this award twice. Miles Garrett has 125 and a half sacks in his career. That's the third amongst active players with Von Miller and Cam Jordan having more. Let me tell you something. Go check his stats. Double digits. I think he had his first season was his statistically worst season with 7 sacks. He had double digit sacks ever since. And there's a reason why he went from the first. There's a reason why he was the top five pick. You could, when you look at Miles Garrett, and you're talking about the Rams, and Les Snead doesn't care about picks. To me, I use the comparison my buddy, my friend Tanya Ray Fox, and she brought this like we would, and I said, well, and I commented, it feels like Les Snead is Paul Heyman. where somehow or another, no matter the cost, they go get talent and surround themselves with talent. Look at Paul Heyman his career. Look at the list of people who've been Paul Heyman guys. When you look at the likes of Seth Rollins, CM Punk, Brock Lesnar, and I think Steve at some point the Undertaker, people who worked with Paul Heyman, Hall of Famers, and it's like, and then you look at recent, like it feels like it's Paul Heyman, where he's just putting himself in a position to get great talent, knows when to kind of add talent, when to move on from talent. That's Paul Heyman, and that's Paul Heyman, and this is Les Snead doing that. And John comments, Miles Garrett going to the Rams is huge. What if the Rams get Aaron? If I was Aaron Donald, I'd sit back and wait for the phone call from Canton to get your goal check. I don't. I Aaron Donald is one of those players who won this award 3 times. He has nothing to prove. When he got his ring, I knew he was done. It was similar to when kind of like when John Elway went back to back. I was like, okay, John, he got his Super Bowl ring right into the sunset. Peyton Manning got it like you just right into the sunset. You leave out on top. You go out on top. And I feel as great as it would be to see Aaron Donald play next to Miles Garrett, combine, between them winning this Defensive Player of the Year award 5 times, it'd be great to watch and great to see. But if I'm Aaron Donald, I'd be good. And and before we jump in, I see my besties in here. Rachel, Tootsie Pop, hey, how are you, Rachel? By the way, congratulations are in order for my friend Rachel. She was hired. She's first of all, she's an amazing writer. Let me preface my statement with that she's an amazing writer. And recently, she was hired, and I'm trying to pull it up. I know I wasn't prepared. It's like when like be prepared. Like you don't play that song for me. When you look at she was hired by Fantasy Six Pack, and so she's joined the team as a fantasy football writer. So congrats to my bestie. She's gonna knock it out of the park at some point. She's got to have it on the show. Thank you, bestie. I had it right. I had it right. Fantasy Six Pack. I know something. I know something, not everything. Thank you. Like shout out to her. Amazing writer, amazing person. Hope to have her on the show. We could talk of some fantasy football. I'm in 2 of her leagues, drafting as we speak. But luckily, there's yeah, I have time. It's great to multitask. I hope to have her on the show to talk football all season. You have her a couple. Have her on the show because she's just phenomenal. Now to go back to my point. Now we talked about the Rams side. The Rams are in a win now because see, here's how great the Rams did this. Peter Schrager from ESPN called it out. It's like you expect us to believe that the Ty Simpson pick is like, oh, that's no. The Ty Simpson pick was all about just having him sit behind Matthew Stafford and develop. And quite frankly, this is a situation where it's kind of like, well, we've seen this before, where we have veteran quarterback, use a first round pick to get a young quarterback, and they barely see the field, or they don't see the field. But this gives you Matthew Stafford's 38. I still feel healthy. He could play the 40 if he wants to. He would if he wants to. I don't know if he wouldn't do it. But there was something bigger down the pipeline, and Leslie knew he had to make a move. And we thought the Trip McDuffie move was great. And then you add Aaron Donald, he's all in on the defense. You get a defensive coordinator and Chris Shula, potentially a future head coach down the road. The Rams are saying we're in win now. Sean McVay and that front office and that team is in win now, without question. And and that's the great part. Now you look at the Brown side of things. Look, you get a young edge player in Jared Verse, and you get 3 draft picks, and you get a 2027 first round pick, which is interesting. Because initially I was one of these guys that say the Browns could win double digit games now after the trade. I'm like, I might have to pull that off the record, pull that off the internet. But I think one of the big takeaways here is that for the Browns, I just personally feel that Shador Sanders showed something. And I think the reason why Todd Monken was hired was for the fact that he worked with Lamar Jackson. It's and I'm not saying Lamar Jackson is Shador Sanders. Not by what I'm saying is that there's the potential to be, to have that Lamar Jackson esque play to come out of Shador. And I think having Todd Monken, who understands the position, understands quarterback, understands offense, and the way this team's being built, they have great running backs. They got Dylan Simpson, they got Quinshon Judkins, they got Harold Fannin Jr. So the offense is not bad, not terrible. The defense takes a hit. When you lose a guy of Miles Garrett caliber, it's very hard to ignore, very hard to miss. But I think the Browns are going to be fine. And and to the point that this deal centered around getting Jared Goff. And I think the Rams said if we're getting Miles Garrett, we can give up Jared Goff. We'll give up the age and the ceiling for Miles Garrett, who had 23 sacks last season, double team to feel like every snap. So yeah, and you get to face the 49ers, the Cardinals, and the Seahawks twice a year. Good luck with that. I don't know what else to say. Like, good luck because you can't double team them every play. You simply can't. So I just think that trade works out. It works out well for the Rams to get Miles Garrett, and I think for the Browns, the 2027 first round pick, you can't beat picks. While Les Snead has this, bleep them picks mentality, Andrew Bear's like, yeah, well, like, please give us those picks mentality and to figure it out. Because look what they did. They traded out second overall pick to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and the Jaguars took Travis Hunter. So they had the Browns are all about picks. So this trade makes sense for everybody. Everybody kind of got what they wanted in the situation. So everybody kind of wins to me in that regard. And speaking of winning, I do before I get to my big picture about Clash of Alien Wrestling. Listen to this episode and every episode of the Sports and the World podcast. Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Go in there, give it a 5 star, give me a 4, make me work harder for it. Um, you're watching on my YouTube channel, watching it live, you're watching on Twitter. Thank you. And yeah, so go on Spotify and Apple, rate the podcast. I read the comments if I remember to read them, which I'm learning to do. And because you're a part of this show, and if you have questions, drop them in the comments. Just drop them here, and I'll more than likely I'll read them and get to them. But so before we transition to the excuse me, before we transition to Brown's big picture, I wanted to sneak in some talk about the WNBA and this commissioner stuff, and a couple of surprises early on in the season. We're not even a fourth of the way done. Most teams, a couple of teams are at 10 games. Both of them at the eight. A couple of them are at the eight. They're at the 9 game mark, 8 9 game mark. But let's look. Here's the standing. You have the Lynx, the Dream, the Wings, the Aces, the Valkyrie, the Liberty, and the Fire, the Portland Fire. And here's what doesn't surprise me is the Portland Fire, or the Toronto Tempo for that matter. Here's what doesn't surprise me. There's so much talent in the WNBA, and we see good talent cut and moved around because of the way rosters are situated. And roster expansion was an issue. And that's how the Valkyries are so good. They had talented players, and having Natalie McCasey as the head coach really helped as well. So I'm not surprised about the Portland Fire. But you look at the Lynx, like they took Olivia Miles when they already have Kayla McBride. And listen, they had no Nafisa Collier. Think about that. No Nafisa Collier. One of the top 10, you could make a case, 5 players in the league. She's not on the court. And they're 7-2. So imagine whenever Nafisa Collier gets healthy, this team they look like a contender. It's early going, but imagine when they get Nafisa Collier back and how great the team could be. The Dream didn't surprise me, sitting at 6-2 with Angel Reese, Alicia Britt. They're going to be fine. I think Angel Reese is doing her part. She's doing a great job there. The Wings, not surprising there. Listen, AZ Flood's starting to figure out we have to be patient because when you're the number one overall pick, you're supposed to be great now. So I'm okay with that. The Aces are. I think the Aces they're going to pick Asia Wilson. Listen, when you're a four-time MVP, you're fine. The Aces. I told people, listen, the Aces are going to be fine. And there may be some games where they feel like they can. No, they're going to have those games, and Asia Wilson is going to get the rest when if they have a big lead, and she's going to be ready for those big time games, and she's going to have those big time games and performances. The Valkyries, they're Veronica Bird and the job that's going on there. On the Liberty with Stewie, they're going to be fine. Listen, my concern is still coaching. I'm still kind of irked that they fired Sandy Brondello, and it was great to see her and the reception she got from the crowd there. And brought like she meant a lot to that franchise, the winningest coach in the franchise history. And they just kind of moved on like it was nothing. That's a company for a different day. And then you kind of look further down the league. You got the Mystics. They're young. They're 4-4. The Fever 4-4. They're going to be fine. And here's the thing: Stephanie White is a tremendous coach. Caitlin Clark is a tremendous player. They're going to be fine. The little art, I don't even say art conversation. That's between the coach and the star player. You see it in the NBA. You can see so not really fully surprised. I'm fully okay with it in that regard. And you look at the tempo, like I said, Sandy Brondell, the team is 100. Marina Mabry, they're very young. They got Kiki Wright, the girl out of UCLA. Brittany Sykes, that's a great team to watch there. Look, these expansion teams are great because there's so much talent in the league and only so many roster spots. So it doesn't surprise me in the absolute least of how great they are in that regard. And then, Spark, Sky, Mercury, Storm, Sun, it's going to take a lot to turn it around. And for my Storm, YJ Johnson is a bright spot. Our fam is a bright. Listen, this team's a couple of years away from being contenders and being great. No Edsy, we're going to be fine. When we're healthy, and we get the yeah. Listen, I'm fine. Listen, if Sonya Rum, she's a great. Once again, we're going to be fine. It's like people are like, oh, panic. If there was a team to panic, listen, I said the Sparks a while back. I said, listen, they have no Kelsey Plum, so that's kind of lean back. They have no Kelsey Plum. But we've seen, Cam Brink play well. We've seen Danica Aguma play be great. We see Hamby. So, that's it's a situation. But for the Sky is falling without the injuries. They're 3-6, and listen, I'm not gonna, hash up situation with injuries in the Sky, but you know, it's gonna be an uphill battle. And it feels like rebuild mode. I don't know Tyler Marshall. Listen, I don't advocate for people losing their job. But if we've seen how this organization is run, they fired a good coach in Teresa Witherspoon, who should be a coach in the WNBA, by the way. She should be. And they fired a great coach. And that's when it kind of went spiraling downhill from there. So those are the things, so there's a couple of Commissioner Cup games on tonight. Watch it. If you're listening live on Twitter, watch it tonight. And if you go back and listen on Spotify or Apple, I hope you watch the game. So let's get out of here. Brown's big picture. Something that bothered me. Um, I always talk about social media. And by nature, social media, and I specifically want to go after Twitter or X. I'm not going to get X. Okay, I think Colby like same thing when we call like, oh, the Willis Tower. No, it's the Sears Tower. It's like when you say, oh, it's the Gulf of America. It's the Gulf of America. Like if you want to listen, if you want to go around and say it, fine. But me, it's Twitter. Twitter was once a place. It's maybe hard for people to imagine. But I want you to kind of go back into the recesses of your mind and remember that Twitter was a great place where you can communicate, be social, talk about sports, you can talk about politics. You can talk about things in a civil manner, even if you disagree. Like, hey man, now this happened years ago. You can't. If you say something positive about what people think is negative, They're going to come after you because they want to target, because they want to find things to disagree with. And I've always believed in civil discourse. And I also learned the power of the block button. Listen, I was out there like Wimby blocking. I was out there like Asia Wilson. I was just blocking. Bam, bam. I was just blocking. I blocked two people. Because if you're not willing to have a conversation, this ties into Clash in Italy, which, which was interesting. And, John agrees. Like, listen, I call it Twitter. If you want to call it X, hey, go ahead. But it's Twitter. So, anywho, and you're right, John, that, let's need is Paul Heyman 2 points. But shifting gears, Clash in Italy PLE was over last weekend. And I don't know whether it was because of the international crowd. I don't know whether it's because of the card, whatever it is. This was a very, very good PLE. And I've always advocated, and a lot of wrestling fans at IWC would love to see a WrestleMania be international. Because it feels like those fans overseas, it's like those crowds are different, especially like when they were in Italy. Sure. And when they went to, like I said, even when they had backlash in Puerto Rico, I enjoyed it. It was great. When they're over there in Europe, they're different parts of the world. It feels like the crowds are different. And I feel like as the American fans, it's like we sometimes take it for granted. But those international crowds, they don't. They show up and it's great. And maybe I maybe want to pop for a little bit more for Soul Ruka, but I get it. Not but that's not what I'm upset about. What I'm upset about is let me get to what I like. Like I said, the Brock over part three, I think it's going to happen. SummerSlam, Brock's from Minnesota. Owen's going to retire him. Brock going to put over to the moon, which we've seen him done, which he did at WrestleMania, and even in this match where he showed his dominance, he's going to put over, and he's going to be retired for good come SummerSlam. I enjoyed that match. Cody and Gunther was great. I think that so Rook and Becky Lynch. Becky Lynch. I love me some Becky Lynch, and I have no problem with Soul Ruka being the champion. So I have no problem with that. I think Soul Ruka, or sky's the limit. Make her the champion makes a whole lot of sense. But once again, that's not what I was upset about. Is what I was upset about is that the Rhea Ripley and Jade Cargill, which I said on social media. You follow me at LaDarius_Brown on Twitter. Um, I said I thought that match was great. It was a great match. And then two people coming out of the woodwork said, "Oh, you're supporting bad wrestling." I'm not gonna say what they even called me because it rhymes with duck, but it starts with the letter C instead of F. I'll put it that way. You're a smart audience who's listening and watching, so you can put together what the word was. And at this point, and of course, yeah, to Zika, yeah, the accent because it's European. And this is what I'm gonna get to the Becky comment. I'm gonna push back a little. I'll get to that in a minute because that's kind of like the one that's kind of like the D story here to my argument. Here's the thing. The argument was like, oh, you're bad. Like, oh, Jade Cargill's the worst wrestler. And listen, do I think that Jade has every match has been great? No, I can make the case that for dozens of superstars on the roster. Could I argue that there's still some things to work on? Absolutely. But when I see someone who kind of been struggling, who I've seen getting a lot of flack on social media, like Jade Cargill in the ring specifically, I'm going to acknowledge it. Like Roman Reigns, it's like we acknowledge that it's the tribal, it's the OTC. I'm going to acknowledge it. But yet fans get like, oh well, she still did. Oh, I'm like, listen, you want to see a bad match? Go watch Tiffany Stratton and Charlotte Flair at WrestleMania. You want to see a match that was terrible, and I like Tiffany Stratton and I like Charlotte Flair because this. I don't know why. I like Charlotte Flair, but I can say that was bad wrestling. Didn't mean the match was terrible. That was some pretty bad wrestling on a big stage, and it doesn't take anything away from Tiffany Stratton nor Charlotte Flair. It's just when I see Jade Cargill be great, and she's been great in the ring with Rhea, and even when the match when she fought Jordan Grace, it's like the thing that I disagree with is how WB has presented her and how she came out of the gates. And in terms of not out of the gates, but like as she progressed. Like when she came out, they made her like tag team champions with Bianca Belair, which I love. They put her in a storyline with easily one of the two stars who I feel are the face of the women's division, her and Rhea Ripley. You put her with one, great. What I didn't like is that they could have gave her a mid card belt, which they did with Sol Ruka. Give her the mid card belt. They should have given her the United States Championship belt. Have her build herself up to be a champion, and then we got something. But when you put the belt on her, when you put the women's championship on her, it just looked different and it felt different. And I'm like, I don't know if this is the way to go. Doesn't mean I don't blame Jay. Jay's not in charge of that. And that's another thing. Understand who. There's a lot of people in IWC don't understand how certain things work, so we blame the wrong people. It's like when she held the belt and she didn't have like a title defense for a couple of months. That's not Jade Cargill's fault. That's booking. That's not her fault. She's not in charge of that department. But my biggest thing is that when we go on social media, if all you can find is the negative, if you can't say one good thing about when someone does something great, it's always negative, negative, negative. And you can always go to the profile and it feels less than 100 followers, uh, just full of negative comments. That's all you need to know. Instead of me trying to argue, not even argue, have a discussion, I block them because you're not worth the conversation. I had that. I tried that when it came to the first night of Raw on Netflix, and I said that with CM Punk, interview with the highlight. Oh, it wasn't on Raw, but it happened at Raw. It wasn't on camera, but it happened at Raw, where Raw was held. And it went back and forth. Like, oh, you're a CM Punk guy. I didn't think I'm a Seth Rollins guy, which I thought was hilarious. But anyway, back to the point. The point is this: I'm going to give credit to Jade Parker when it's due because I've been critical, but I'm not going to this sentence. I'm not going to say everything she does is bad because think about what WWE they put her in two programs with two of the top two female stars in that division in Rhea Ripley and with Bianca Belair. Now, at some what's next, I don't know because I think we can kind of get over the Jade Rhea thing, and I think John said the same thing is that I'm kind of over it, but I'm over it. I think there's more for them to do. And listen, Becky needs to retire. Listen, I don't think first of all, Becky doesn't need to retire. If Becky wants to leave, I think Becky at some point she may retire. She may go to Hollywood. But what I tell you, what Becky Lynch has done, she's put over people with that Intercontinental belt. She's put over people in such a way it's reminiscent of when the Miz was a mid card champion, both IC and United States champion. Just putting people, making the belt relevant. Even at times when the heavyweight championships didn't feel relevant, the mid card belt felt relevant. And that's what I think Becky Lynch has done. She's put over, now you add Sol Ruka, she put over Tiffany Stratton, she's put over Liv Morgan. And she puts over people at this point in the career. You're seeing Bailey doing that. You're seeing these four horsewomen, three of them are doing that. I'm still holding out hope for, she came back to AEW. That's down the road. We'll see how that works out. But I just want to talk about that because to the whole Jade Cargill thing. Because at the end of the day, like if you just choose to go on social media, just be negative and like you just she's not and all you don't give a reason. You just say she's bad, and you can't acknowledge when someone does something good. That you go out of your way to find the best because it's harder to find what's good. And that's what should have happened. So that's the way I look at it in that regard. Before I put a button on the ship, and John's like Tony, listen, NXT is cooking. Tony D, a guy I don't like because of crowbar and math. I like what they're doing with that with NXT as always. The women's division is doing great. The Great American Bash pay per view is coming up later this month, and but so he thought the promo was it was bad. My point is that listen, bad wrestling happens everywhere. If you're going to be equal opportunities, call it out. Don't just you just don't like Jade Parker, and that's your prerogative for whatever reason you want. But if you just say, "Oh, you support bad wrestling," no, you just support being negative about wrestling because you as a fan, all you can say, "Oh, boo, duh." It's like, well, you want your favorite NFL team? Why are they bad? His quarterback's terrible. The defense. If you can explain why they're bad. It's just, oh, they're bad. Oh, why are they bad? It may sound like a higher tier question. It may sound like, oh man, it's a superfluous question, but it's a legitimate question. Like, if you're gonna say somebody, if you're gonna say Jade Carter's bad, record explain why she's bad. Okay, I hear a lot of talk about that on softball, which I'll be covering. The AUSL coming back up next week, as a matter of fact. But we talk about. I see that all the time. They say, "Oh, why is it this way?" Listen, just say you don't understand, or just if you get nothing constructive instead of in lieu of just being destructive, just admit that. But for further future here, before I go, this is a reminder. It's a lot easier in this world to be negative. But let's face it, the world in many parts of it, even here in this country, in the United States, it's negative. It's negative. It's a lot harder to find the good. Try to find the good. If you can, be the good. So, with that being said, thank you, friends and future friends, for watching this episode of Sports in the World podcast. Like I said, like, listen, subscribe to this episode, every episode of the podcast. Subscribe to the podcast itself, Apple, Spotify, where you get your podcast. Follow, follow the channel, LaDarius Brown. Easy to find. Type in my name. I'm wearing the talking shirt. Made easy to find. Follow social media, LaDarius underscore Brown on Twitter. There's double underscore Brown on Instagram. There's underscore Brown on TikTok as well. I might just be posting more videos, but let me know what you like, what kind of content you want, and I'll go that route as well. But for the future friends, until you see and or hear me again next time, I'm LaDarius. Be real, be you, be blessed, and be safe from all of us here from the Sports and the World podcast.